Much for having me on today. I'm going to be sharing about my daughter. Both my children actually take a seer redox, and I'm so grateful it was introduced to us. Backstory is my daughter was born a little bit premature, and she was born purple. She had a really tough time acclimating to being out of the womb and really struggled to catch her breath, literally. And we spent the first full year of her life spending many nights in the hospital, spending a lot of time trying to understand what was happening with Abigail and her upper respiratory issues, just struggling. Her immune system was fighting against her, and she was kind of born that way. So she spent the first 2 years of her life being really sick. Um, and I share that because, it was just who Abigail was at the time, and we were just used to it. That became our normal. But when she was 17 months old, she was diagnosed with a disorder that caused her to have seizures. And unfortunately for Abigail, it wasn't just one here or there. She had multiple a day, anywhere from 7 to 20 a week. And this is a tiny little toddler. So just try to imagine that, because as her mom, seeing that daily was really difficult. But it took a day. That was our life changing moment where Abigail was not only having seizures, which for us at the time looked like staring spells, that you could not snap her out of, even with physical touch. Um, but she started vomiting. And for those of you that know anything about seizures or any neurological issue, that's not good. So Abigail, I just remember the day she was laying on our floor after vomiting and having some seizures. And I looked at my child, who looked lifeless at the time, and trying to decide what to do. So I scooped her up and I brought her to the hospital, and we were there overnight because we just couldn't get things under control. But it took that 8 hours of nonstop experiencing this and watching my 2.5-year-old go through this to throw my hands up. And I said, fine, I'll just try it. Because I had heard about it and I said no. And I was super skeptical. I'm like, it's not going to work for her. Medication's not working for her. She's been on medication and it's been increasing every other month for the last year of her life. Nothing's helping. And she also was 75% speech delayed. So Abigail really didn't have a lot of useful language for an almost 3-year-old, which is, challenging to deal with, because Abigail just learned to scream for what she wants. But fast forward to about 3 months on the product, we noticed this language piece coming into play. And even her speech therapist, who came multiple times a week, was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? She is going through this major speech surge. And then about 4.5 months on the product, I could say hands down that I had not seen a seizure in several weeks. And it just got better from there. We went 6 months on the product. She was saying hi to people. I didn't even have to phrase things for her to copy me. She was using her own language skills. And even her neurologist was like, oh my gosh. And everything from there just went up. And after she was on the product for just over 2 years, she was seizure free. I talked to her doctor about weaning her off medication, which honestly did not work for her, just her specifically. And sometimes that happens for children. And her doctor said, you know what, I really got to see an MRI, because Abigail had some scar tissue that was unexplained on the frontal lobe of her brain on both sides. And what typically happens with children, especially young children, the way Abigail was, it either stays the same, or typically it gets worse because your brain is growing so much at that age. So we do an MRI, and I personally got a phone call from her neurologist, who was like, in my 37 years, I have not seen this before. Abigail's scar tissue didn't get worse and it didn't stay the same, but 50% of it is gone. It's not there anymore. And we were like, I'm crying, she's crying. We've watched this little girl go from so challenged, so many complications to like just amazing. And so she agreed. And we took about 4.5 months to do a very slow medication wean. We were very, and I believed in ASEA. Her doctor did not. But I was nervous because I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? So as we slowly weaned down the medication, I increased her ASEA that she took. That's all I could do. That's all I knew to do. And by January, she had been successfully weaned off with no marked seizures. Then a few months later, we actually did an EEG. We were in the hospital for 4 days because all of Abigail's EEGs, we were overnight several times just to see what her brain was doing. And we did those several times a year. All 4 days, nothing. I mean, we had doctors coming in the room because they were so excited to meet her because she was this friendly, peppy little girl saying, hey guys. And they're like, why is she here? So anyway, she is now seizure free and she has been successfully off all of her seizure medication for 2 years. She is not 75% speech delayed. She is the most chatty child you'll ever meet. Sometimes she's too chatty and we have to calm her down. But, you know, I don't know where we'd be without this. And thank God, you know, somebody was like, you got to try it, you got to try it, you got to try it, to a very skeptical mom who was desperate for something. And I'm really forever grateful.